Hi, my name is Rachel Smith.
And I'm Lulu Aguiar.
And we're currently in our second year in the graduate Landscape Architecture program. Last May, we were fortunate enough to travel to New Zealand with our ARTA grant. We spent most of our time on the North Island and were able to see the wide range of landscapes present in the country. The intention of our research was to learn about the implications of what legal personhood of land means in the context of New Zealand's unique cultural landscape, and what impacts this has on conservation practices.
A quick background on what personhood is. In 2014, Te Urewera National Park was granted legal personhood. This means that legally, Te Urewera has constitutional rights and is a protected entity. It is no longer a national park and no longer owned by the Crown, but the space is still protected. The Te Urewera Board is responsible for governing the management plan created under the Act. Following this precedent, the Waitangi River was granted legal personhood in 2017. This decision was made in order to restore the river to its natural health and to address claims made by Maori tribes of the area. Our hypothesis was that Pakeha, aka white people of New Zealand, would think Our hypothesis was that Pakeha, aka white people of New Zealand, would think personhood to be something new and exciting, and would result in major changes in the way public land is managed and protected. After a brief stay in Christchurch, we flew to Wellington, New Zealand's capital, where we rented a car and began our journey around the perimeter of the North Island. We interviewed professors at several universities in various disciplines, including Maori studies, anthropology, and of course, landscape architecture. What they told us was that how Maori see landscape and land use has always been prevalent in New Zealand's national conversation and and will result in major changes in the way public land is managed and protected.
So the two main stops on our itinerary after our interviews were visiting the landscapes that had been granted personhood, the Waitangi River, which is located inside Waitangi National Park, and Te Urewera. These places are home to two of New Zealand's great walks. This is an extensive trail network cared for by the Department of Conservation to showcase the best of New Zealand's landscapes and natural and cultural values. Hiking, or tramping as the Kiwis call it, is very popular in New Zealand, and reservations for huts on the 9 official Great Walks reach capacity in the summer months. For the purposes of our research, we decided to embrace the fact that there were Great Walks located on both the Waitangi River and in Te Urewera. This way, we could engage in a part of New Zealand's culture while getting some literal hands-on experience. We were scheduled to embark on a 5-day canoe journey down the Waitangi River, but since the official trip season had ended in April, we had been warned we may not be able to go. The Waitangi River is infamous for its temperamental nature and destructive flooding. We called ahead the night before and were informed that everything looked good, so when we arrived the next morning, we were a bit shocked to find that the river had risen 5 meters overnight. So we changed our plans and headed down the 79-kilometer Waitangi River Road, which follows the southern reaches of the river past small communities dotted with farms and mare, which are sacred Maori meeting houses. These communities offer a brief glimpse into the rich past of Maori tribes living along the river.
The landscape on both sides of the road varied drastically between the areas that were part of the national park surrounding the river and those that were not. Without a map, we could instantly tell which type of land we were passing through by looking at the trees. The national park is full of lush native fauna, while privately owned land was often cleared for trees, or in the process of being logged, or dotted with grazing sheep and cows. After a brief stay in wine country, we packed our backpacks and headed to Te Urewera to complete the Lake Wakangarana Great Walk. This 46-kilometer trail weaves through the rainforest surrounding the lake, which is an area that has been significant for the Tuhoe people for centuries.
During our 4-day hike, we climbed 1,000 feet to the top of Panikeri Bluff, back down through ancient and very windy beech forest, along the lakeshore through ferns and lots of mud, and back into the dense Potocarp forest, all while racing the sun, which set at 4:30 in the afternoon. Pest control is very important in this area, and there's a major kiwi conservation area along the northern border of the lake, which is managed by local Maori. This area is actually fenced off to prevent stoats and possums from killing young kiwi. Because we were hiking in the off-season, we hardly saw anyone and had the giant huts to ourselves at night. Pro tip, don't listen to Africa by Toto before you head out into the wilderness.
Throughout the whole trip, we took countless photographs, sketched, and journaled to document our personal experience. In addition to the interviews, we also did archival research to try to understand more about New Zealand's history. When we arrived back to the States, we continued our research through an independent study over the summer in which we delved deeper into New Zealand's history regarding land use, ownership, and confiscation. So the history is quite complicated, but we will attempt to summarize it quickly because it is essential to put the different cultural relationships with landscapes in context. In the 1800s, Britain established a colony in New Zealand soon after they began to seize Maori land. Knowing this would eventually lead to war, the British proposed the Treaty of Waitangi, an agreement between Maori and British about how land and resources were to be maintained. As you can probably guess, there were some pretty big misunderstandings. Soon, the Crown declared all Maori land must be registered or it would be confiscated. In an attempt to prevent the Crown from alienating their land, Maori banded together to create the Maori King movement in hopes to claim land. This is especially since Maori didn't traditionally believe in land ownership. Despite the previous agreement, war broke out in the 1860s and the military was allowed to seize any tribal land they wanted. It took until 1975 for the Crown to recognize the overwhelming claims made by Maori who alleged the Crown had violated the Treaty of Waitangi Act of 1840, and the Waitangi Tribunal was created to address those claims.
Several of these claims were made by the Tuhoi, whose land comprises Te Urewera and had been seized by the Crown in the early 1900s. These maps show the loss of Tuhoi land during that period. Over time, the Crown seized more and more Maori land. This land had the potential to be economically beneficial to the Tuhoi, but the Crown had decided to use this land to create Te Urewera National Park in 1954. While Tuhoi were not in direct opposition to the park, they had never signed the original treaty, and they wanted to remain on their ancestral land and govern their own people. The Waitangi Tribunal inquired into the Te Urewera claims, and soon the Crown and Tuhoi came together to make an agreement. Neither the Crown nor Tuhoi would own Te Urewera, but both parties would manage it under personhood legislation. As you can see from the current day map, Tuhoi have regained some of their ancestral land. Maori tribes all over New Zealand have made hundreds of claims, including the people along the Wanganui River, who have logged over 83 claims, alleging the Crown had abused their power. The tribunal has made clear the contrast in the way Maori and Pakeha approach land use. Maori observe and understand the world cosmologically, spiritually, holistically, and associate themselves with the environment that surrounds. While Maori did not traditionally practice or have a concept of land ownership, this does not mean they do not participate in economic activities such as forestry and farming.
Although British settlers and Maori had differing relationships to land, both cultures have profoundly altered the landscape. Shifting patterns of land use have produced a unique cultural landscape, as well as a stark difference in land management. This shift is especially visible on North Island, where significant deforestation has occurred, both before and after colonization. Quickly, timber became one of New Zealand's main exports. This was extremely visible to us as we drove around North Island. It seemed like every turn of the road revealed a different patch of pine waiting to be harvested. Today in New Zealand, there are limits and restrictions on forestry, public land, and sacred or historical places. This means that resources can't be extracted from these sites. In some sense, legal personhood can be thought of as a way of maintaining and caring for land without having to claim direct ownership.
So, although we were not able to answer our initial question, the personhood legislation and resulting changes may set off a chain of events that has the potential to radically alter the way people view their surrounding landscape in the future. In reality, it was our perception of this landscape change, this designation to give land or bodies of water a legal status as a person, that was something we as Westerners viewed as land protection designation. And we'd like to thank the Knowlton School, the Columbus Foundation, Justin Parsher, and our interviewees for making all this research possible. Thank you.